You are standing in a hallway in Clarion County, Pennsylvania. The floors are white oak. They were laid in 1911. A man named Harold Becker is 81 years old. He is walking the full length of that hallway in his house slippers. Not a single creak, not one. The floors are silent, the way floors are supposed to be silent. I asked him when he last had a flooring contractor in the house. He looked at me the way you look at someone who just asked if he needed a mechanic to change a light bulb. Never, he said, not once in 43 years of owning this house. I asked him what he used. He walked to the kitchen and came back with a cardboard canister that cost him 89 cents at the hardware store. Talcum powder. Plain talcum powder. The same thing his father used. The same thing his father's father used on the farmhouse floors in Saxony before they crossed the Atlantic in 1903. He poured a small amount between two boards that had started to creak 6 weeks ago. He worked it in with an old toothbrush. He stood up and walked the boards. Silence. That was 6 weeks ago. The boards had not creaked since. The flooring repair industry in the United States generates $400 million every single year. The average homeowner who calls a contractor for squeaky floor repair pays between $200 and $1,000 per visit, depending on the method used. Harold's annual floor maintenance budget is less than $2. That gap represents the distance between what a squeaky floor actually is and what the flooring industry needs you to believe it is. And that distance is exactly why you have never heard of the talcum method. Here is what is actually happening inside a squeaky floor. A squeaky floor is almost never a structural problem. It is not a broken board. It is not a failing subfloor. It is not rot or damage or anything that requires a contractor, a tool, or a repair bill. A squeaky floor is friction, two pieces of wood rubbing against each other at the point where they meet. That is the entire problem. Wood is not static, it breathes. It expands when humidity rises and contracts when humidity drops. Every heating season, every humid summer, every dry winter, the boards in your floor are moving fractions of a millimeter against each other and against the subfloor beneath them. Over time, the finish between those boards wears away at the contact points. The wood touches wood directly, and wood on wood under pressure and movement makes noise. It has always made noise. It will always make noise as long as wood touches wood directly at a friction point. The solution is not to replace the board. The solution is not to screw the board down from above. The solution is not to inject adhesive into the gap. All of those methods address the symptom. The method Harold uses addresses the cause. You put a dry lubricant between the surfaces that are rubbing. The friction disappears. The noise disappears with it. That is the entire science. There is nothing complicated about it. What is complicated is understanding why 4 generations of American homeowners stopped knowing this and started calling contractors instead. Talcum powder is magnesium silicate. It is one of the softest minerals on Earth. It registers a 1 on the Mohs hardness scale, which runs from 1 to 10. Diamond is a 10. Talc is a 1. That softness is the property that makes it work. When you work talcum powder into the gap between two floorboards, it does not compress or clump or harden. It maintains a permanent, microscopic layer between the two surfaces. The boards can still move the way wood needs to move. They expand and contract freely. But they no longer touch each other directly at the friction point. The talc layer moves with them. The squeak that was caused by direct wood-on-wood contact cannot happen because direct wood-on-wood contact no longer exists at that point. This is not a temporary fix. The talc does not evaporate. It does not wash away under normal conditions. It does not break down over time. Harold's floors have been silent for 6 weeks on a single application. His father's floors in this same house were maintained this way for decades without reapplication. The only time you reapply is if the squeak returns, which in a well-maintained floor on a stable subfloor may never happen. The Becker family did not invent this. They brought it from Saxony, the way the Amish brought water glass from the Rhineland, and the hot flush from the German and Swiss farmhouse tradition. In the timber-framed houses of Central Europe in the 1600s and 1700s, squeaky floors were a known and solved problem. Wood floors in those houses were maintained with mineral powders ground from local stone. Talc deposits are common across the alpine and subalpine regions of Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. The farmers who lived in those houses did not have flooring contractors. They had the mineral that was already in the ground beneath them. Ground fine enough to work between boards, it kept floors silent across buildings that are still standing today. The German term for this practice translates roughly to joint dusting. It appears in household management texts from the 1700s, alongside instructions for maintaining wooden furniture hinges and door frames. The same mineral, the same application, the same result. Silent wood-on-wood contact points maintained for the life of the building. When German and Swiss settlers crossed to Pennsylvania in the 1700s, they brought the practice with them. It spread through farming communities in Lancaster, Clarion, and Mifflin counties, the same way the egg and drain method spread. Not through publications or official guidelines, through demonstration. You watched your mother do it, you watched her mother do it. It worked every time, so you kept doing it. In 1923, a household management manual published by the Pennsylvania State Agricultural Extension used talcum powder as the recommended first response for squeaky wood floors. That document existed. It was in circulation in rural Pennsylvania communities for decades. In 1955, the National Floor Covering Association published its first set of residential floor maintenance guidelines. Talcum powder was not listed. Mineral powders were not listed. The recommended methods were professional inspection and contractor repair. 3 of the 7 members of the publication committee that year held commercial interests in flooring installation and repair companies. The knowledge was not banned. It simply did not appear in the document. And the people who were never asked to include it were the same people billing $200 a visit to fix what talcum powder fixes for 89 cents. The evidence that this works is not limited to Harold Becker's hallway. The Smithsonian Institution's Museum Conservation Institute maintains historic wood floors across multiple buildings in the Washington, D.C. complex. Their published conservation protocols for pre-1900 wood floors list dry mineral lubricants, including talc, as the standard first intervention for friction noise in historic flooring. That is a federal institution recommending the same thing Harold uses. The Colonial Williamsburg Foundation in Virginia maintains 18th-century wood floors across hundreds of historic structures. Their floor maintenance documentation specifies talcum powder application as the primary method for addressing board friction in original flooring. They use it because it works, and because it does not damage historic wood the way adhesives and mechanical fasteners do. The reason it does not damage the wood is the same reason it silences the squeak. It is the softest mineral used in any flooring application. It cannot scratch. It cannot compress the wood fiber. It cannot alter the structure it is applied to. It simply eliminates friction at the contact point. The old Sturbridge Village Museum in Massachusetts maintains an operational reproduction of an 1800 New England village, including original and period-accurate wood floors in over 40 structures. Their published maintenance guide lists talc application as the routine floor care method across all structures. 40 buildings, all maintained with a mineral that costs less than $1. The Building Technology Heritage Library, which archives historic American construction documents, has digitized floor maintenance guides from the 1880s through the 1940s. Talcum powder and mineral powders appear as the standard squeaky floor treatment in every decade of that archive, right up until the mid-1950s. Then they disappear from the guides the same way water glass disappeared from the egg preservation documents, and the hot flush disappeared from the plumbing guidelines. The flooring contractor industry formalized in the post-war housing boom of the late 1940s and early 1950s. Millions of new homes, millions of new wood floors, a market that needed maintenance revenue to sustain itself, and a set of industry guidelines written by the people who needed that revenue to exist. Here is exactly what Harold does, and what you need to do. First, locate the squeak precisely. Walk the floor slowly and mark the boards that produce noise. The squeak will come from a specific point between 2 boards or between a board and the subfloor. Second, pour a small amount of talcum powder directly onto the gap at the squeak point. You do not need much. A light covering across the gap is sufficient. Third, work the powder into the gap using an old toothbrush or a stiff paintbrush. Push it down into the joint with short, firm strokes along the length of the gap. Fourth, walk the boards. In most cases, the squeak is gone immediately. If the squeak has reduced but not disappeared, apply a second small amount and work it in again. Fifth, wipe the surface clean with a dry cloth. The powder between the boards stays in the joint where you put it. The powder on the surface wipes away cleanly. It leaves no residue on the floor finish. That is the complete method. No tools, no contractor, no repair bill. 89 cents and 5 minutes. There is one honest limitation to know. If your floor squeak is caused by a loose board that is separated from the joist below it, the talc method addresses the surface friction but does not reattach the board to the structure. A board that moves significantly up and down when you step on it, rather than just sliding laterally against its neighbor, may need a screw driven from below through the subfloor into the board to reattach it to the joist. That is a structural issue, not a friction issue, and the two are different problems. You can tell the difference easily. If the board moves vertically when you press it with your foot, the issue is attachment. If the board is stable but produces noise when you walk it, the issue is friction. Talc fixes friction. Harold's floors have never had an attachment issue because he has maintained them correctly for 4 decades. Proper floor maintenance prevents the kind of deterioration that leads to structural problems. The contractor who charges you $400 for squeaky floor repair is often fixing problems that decades of neglect created. Harold has no neglect to fix. The flooring contractor industry in the United States generates $400 million every year. A significant portion of that revenue comes from squeaky floor repair calls. The average contractor visit for squeaky floor repair takes between 1 and 3 hours. The materials used in most contractor repairs cost between $20 and $80. The labor markup on a $200 visit for a 1-hour job represents some of the highest margins in the residential repair industry. Harold's 89-cent canister has outlasted 3 contractor quotes he received in 1987, when a neighbor told him he needed professional help for floors that were starting to make noise. He did not call the contractors. He went to the hardware store instead. His floors have been silent since 1987. That is 38 years of silence for less than the cost of a cup of coffee. The contractor who quoted him $300 in 1987 is retired. Harold is still walking his white oak floors in his house slippers without making a sound. Drop what you paid in the comments. If you have ever called a contractor to fix squeaky floors, I need to know what they charged you and whether it worked long term. Because what happened in that repair is exactly what this method addresses, and the flooring industry never will. And if you fixed squeaky floors yourself, drop what method you used and whether it held. We are building a record of what this actually costs household by household, and your number is the point. Next week, I'm going to show you the Amish drainage system that civil engineers in the 1930s built an entire federal drainage manual around. In 1958, the National Association of Home Builders got it removed from the Model Residential Code. The reason they gave was that it could not be inspected by inspectors who had never been trained to inspect it. The document exists. We found it. The Amish never forgot. You were just never given it. Now you have it.